customer value proposition. And I do a whole class on this, and you really have to do some research, all right? I did this was the mistake on my $1 million, but it cost me $999,000 to do it business. I didn't do any customer research. I was coming from the wireless industry. I'd actually ran some retail stores for Bell South. I knew what I was doing. Yeah, whatever. It was not a disastrous lesson, but it was an expensive one, all right, of my own money that I spent putting into that business that basically, and we ended up having to close the doors on. Because I just didn't do good research. And particularly, I give nobody an excuse anymore to say, I don't know where to go look for that information. Where can you get it? All right. Now, you may not yourself be a computer expert, but that's okay. There are plenty of people around you that are. Right? We were talking earlier about, who was I talking to about? Go to your 6-year-old if you want to Google something, and they'll get you all the information you need. It is not difficult. They're teaching in the schools now. You can take classes at the public library if you don't know how to do internet searches. There is absolutely no excuse not to do research. Some basic stuff. I tell you, nothing irritates me more than I get an entrepreneur come to me and ask me to coach them, and I say, tell me about the research you've done. Well, I haven't done it. I go, go do your research, then come back and talk to me. Because I think they expect me to do it for them. And that ain't going to happen. It's too easy to do. Yeah, Will.
One thing I'm not mentioning is often you're surprised when you do start. You had me do some research and things that I thought were sold weren't sold.
Yeah, yeah. And your business, you've been running your business for years. And it's, when you can sit back and look at what, sometimes it's statistics or it's articles people are writing about your business or something, near your business. And you start getting a whole different perspective than you do of having actually been in the business yourself. And I learned that lesson a hard way. I was running retail stores for Bell South. Well, Bell South had a pretty big name. You're getting a bill every week, or excuse me, every month with Bell South on it. So it was easy to go by a Bell South store and go, gosh, I'll go in there and, for my communications needs. It's a whole lot more difficult for a funny name like Busby Pring. That's what we called our first, business, to go in there and go, what are those guys all about? And I spent a lot of money advertising, but I wasn't advertising the right people. I wasn't hitting the right thing because, I opened the doors and people weren't, knocking me over to get in. So, but that was just lack of research, lack of really understanding. I had this old paradigm and old mentality from my corporate days of how things would work, and it didn't work. So do your research. There is absolutely no excuse not to do some basic research. And also, I didn't hear anybody, except for Chuck, who's said, I've inventing something or patenting something. Chuck was beyond this before he and I got to know each other, but I get people come in and go, I've got this great new gadget, and I'm going to patent this thing. And I especially hate the ones that go, I've already spent $10,000 with this company that said they'd help me research patents and all that kind of stuff. And you can go on the USPT, it's uspto.gov, and you can research patents yourself, right, Chuck? Yeah. But I get so many people come in and they've already spent money trying to patent something and haven't even looked themselves to see if there's anything like that. And I usually have my computer on around me, or I have this thing that I can get on the internet. And if I'm sitting there talking to an entrepreneur, I'll Google or go on the patent office and go, I see 3 things right here that are, people are selling right now that look exactly like what you're talking about. Really? So, it's not that difficult. That's my point. And if you are not a computer expert yourself, you don't have to look far to get one. And there's a lot of information. I think back to the days before I had laptops and smartphones, and I don't know how we did research. I don't think we ever did that much, because you usually would pay some company $100,000 to research a market for you, or whatever. You just didn't do it. You guessed a lot. So anyway, I make my point there. So do your research. The other thing, I mentioned this again earlier, is what I call thinking outside in. Whenever you ask a question about your business, say, what would my customer think? What would my typical customer think, say? How would they react to this? Think about that first. Even if you have advisors or employees and you're kind of shooting these ideas past them, that's fine too. But always think, and if you can't answer that question, go ask one. All right? Or go ask, even if you don't have a customer yet, go ask somebody who you want to be your customer. Again, they'll be happy to help you. You'd be surprised. So if you're starting out and, if you're doing massage therapy and you don't have customer number one yet, go to whoever you think your typical customer might be and say, hey, if I was going to open a massage therapy business, would you like to come in? Would you like me to come to you? What would you expect to pay if I came to you versus if you came into my location? And, you just ask those questions. You get a wealth of information. Ask 1, ask 10 people. You're going to get a lot more information than you will yourself just thinking, I think this will work. So think outside in. Always ask the customers about pricing, about how they want to purchase the product, where they want to purchase it. Just ask questions. Another thing, and I put this number 2 because I think it's particularly important in our communities here. We're not in a large metropolitan area. You may end up doing business in large metropolitan areas, but you're probably going to start out down here. And our communities are small, so your reputation is important. You got to be real careful that, like what I call the core values of your company are also the core values that you have, and that you're a reflection of your company basically as an entrepreneur, right? So however you act towards customers or just out in the community is going to be a reflection on your business. Play by the rules. Make sure you have a proper legal organization. I had a young man come to us who was in the excavation business, and he had a couple of part-time employees. And I asked him if he had set up an LLC yet, Limited Liability Corporation. He said, no, I hadn't. And I said, do that. Go home tonight and do that. Because you're dealing with big, heavy pieces of equipment. Somebody's going to get hurt. They're going to sue you as an individual because you're employing them as an individual. And that means they can sue you and get your house, your car, your wife's car, everything you own. Retirement accounts, boom, it's all open to them. Set up an LLC, it's a lot more safe for you as an entrepreneur. So make sure you've got proper legal organizations depending on what you're doing. And do your compliance and reporting. Stay out of trouble. The quickest way you can get into trouble by running your own business is not to file your taxes. It's not a pretty sight. The government is above banks, is above your investors, is above you, above everything that you have. So if you're not filing your taxes, they can shut your business down overnight. We see it all the time. So keep up with your taxes. So again, if you aren't an accountant or you are uncomfortable with that, pay somebody to do it. Okay, and I from the day I hired the first employee, I got an outsourced payroll service because the one that slips up most people is paying your payroll taxes. Because people will sit there and go, well, I don't have enough money to wait, I'll pay the payroll taxes later, and then things build up, and all of a sudden the state's knocking on your door, and it's not a pretty sight. So make sure you just stay out of trouble. Do what you're supposed to do. And it's not that difficult. I think that's one of the things I hear. I don't think I have a slide on this, but I'll pause here and make a couple of statements. One of the things I hear as to why people don't get into business or even don't hire employees, they think it's complicated, that there's all this reporting I got to do and taxes and all that stuff. Yeah, there is stuff, but it's not that complicated. And once you learn how to do it, or like I said, outsource it, and for relatively small amounts of money, it's not that difficult. It's just part of your process. But that's the one thing I hear people fear the most. Oh, I got to pay all these payroll taxes and unemployment taxes and all that. Very simple stuff. Marketing and sales. As I mentioned before, it's very important as an entrepreneur to make sure you're out there selling your product. Because if you don't sell your product, you're not going to have any customers. If you got no customers, you got no business. All right? So you really have to understand sales and marketing. If you're shy, if you've never been a salesperson or you've never been a marketing, don't know much about marketing, get some help. All right? I started out as a salesperson, and I think one of the things that always irritated me was people come along and go, I'm a naturally born salesperson. I can sell anything. There's an art and a science to selling, just like being a surgeon. I mean, if you can do it well or you can do it bad. If you're a bad salesperson and you're trying to sell your own product or service, you're going to go out of business because you're never going to get any customers. So you really have to think about that and make sure you really understand it. And the kind of the basic thing I always tell every entrepreneur is distinguish between the two things. There's a message, and that's what, drives your customer to do business with you, gets that value proposition out there to them. The message, we're better, we're faster, we're cheaper. And then there's the messengers, and that's, is it advertising? Is it direct salespeople? Is it you're selling this through somebody else? Are you selling it over the internet? So you got the message and the messengers. You really have to understand that and have those two things buttoned down in order to be successful. So if you just have one without the other, you could have, and I think this is what made my first business fail. I think I was using the right messengers, but I don't think I was using the right message, all right? And I spent a lot of money on the messengers. I think over $100,000 in the first year just on advertising alone. But I don't think we had the right message. We weren't hitting the right people. We weren't getting the right people in the door. So you have to be top line focused. You have to